Yeah, this is a lovely call. It's amazing to be with everyone. We were actually just with Una and Gisli. Where's Una? Is she beside you? Um, can't hear
Yeah,
you.
she's
She's
on the
somewhere.
toilet. She'll be
Ah,
back
so
in 2 minutes.
she's there and she's not there.
She's
Um,
here.
yeah. Amazing. We'll give her some time. Una is 20 weeks pregnant, and she's due on the sometime in the second week of December. So by sheer coincidence, she's passing through Helsinki today, and we just had a dinner with her and Johanna. So there's something very synchronistic about what Joy opened up, or was it Noha as a question, and then now we're here. Let's have a little bit of a check-in from Joy. How's it going? What's it been like? What's it like to be in your kind of inner dance, energy, life force body with all these processes, these female motherhood processes happening?
Hi, everyone. Super nice to see you guys. It's been a minute. Yeah. Well, I was filling out before we jumped in the call what I felt was relevant to share in this space. And in terms of my personal story and where I'm at right now with this process of giving birth, I feel like it gives brings some perspective to take it from the first time that I was pregnant, that I was around 16 years old. And so now I'm at a portal in which, after 3 interrupted pregnancies and 2 miscarriages, I'm going to finally give birth to my first child, which would be my 6th child, and is the first one who is going to cross the portal to this manifest reality. And I'm also 40 years old, and it's my first child, and my husband is 50, and it's also his first. So it's quite an event with that kind of background for both of us and for me personally. And so in regards to the miscarriages that I had, the second one that I had was within the context of the intensive, the intensive that I did, the inner dance intensive. And what was really interesting for me is that even though for sure it's an intense experience, I was able to go through it to an extent from a very non-dualistic point of view, in which these kind of processes can be seen as energetic adjustments, and not necessarily from the perspective of right or wrong, things that are going right or wrong. And this is something that I was really wanting to share with, I don't remember who, someone posted in the chat that she was going through her second miscarriage. And eventually there will be time for that. So I could kind of generalize that last experience to all the other experiences that were prior with the other pregnancies, in terms of like how I was finally able to synthesize all the energetic that were put into motion throughout all those experiences since when I was young. And both my husband and I did a lot of work to bring together the conditions to open a space in which we could feel that we could offer a good life for a human being. And there have been also interesting predictions for this baby from different holy people and oracles. So for me, super, super special and super meaningful that now I have the opportunity to be with this community here. That is, of course, like offering these energetic surplus as we speak to hold space for this baby to come through. So I'm super, super grateful for everyone that is here. And yeah, super interested in terms of what we can put together as a community to be able to bring something for women. We're gonna have a home birth. We're planning on giving birth in the water. We have a team of 5 women. We have 1 gynecologist, 1 pediatrician, 2 doulas, and then myself and my husband. And that in regards of the general experiences that women have at hospitals in the context of the patriarchy, I feel like it's a very fortunate context. And even more so when we can add inner dance to it, so that yeah, you know, all the sensations and all the the consciousness and the downloads that can come through birth have an opportunity to happen, versus numbing out the pain with medicines, versus checking out, you know, because it's getting too intense. So for me, inner dance playlists have done this for other intense moments of my life, have helped me process them and come on the other side. And so I know that these might be a pretty big one. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's so good to hear you and to hear from you now and to see you. There's something super raw, vibrant, authentic, balanced, vulnerable, anticipatory, settled. And I think me and others can hear you speak from a really confident place. Like this is really arriving. This is probably the first time any of us are hearing that you have had like that many miscarriages. It was Noha who spoke about that, by the way. She was the one who posted that, and then she's one of the people in this call. But the way you described how there's such a level of trust and knowing that all of those are supposed to happen for a reason. You're literally mapping out for us that it's something to do with the conditions. Like the conditions need to be there for a real birth to happen, actually happen. So there's something about this moment that's, you know, like beyond any of us, beyond inner dance, beyond the playlist, that represents something kind of deep, and just giving it voice seems to be quite amazing. Una, maybe it would be nice for you to check in because you're also 2 in 1. And people holding energy are now holding an energy, and they're being held by this energy. So it's actually quite interesting to listen to more than just the person speak. There's a whole process. So if you could give us a situation, or what's it been like? You and Gisley came together within an energy process. So in a way, this is one of those energy babies. We could call it an inner dance baby or what have you. Been listening to your this thing channel through you. So it's quite synchronic that you're passing by here in Helsinki just the moment where this call was being planned. And I literally forgot that we were supposed to meet you when I was just automatically say, okay, Tuesday is normally when we have the call. So maybe you can give us your just some words, just put some words into what's also going on in your own body on top of what Joy had shared. And even the dad, like Gisley, could just say what he wants if in case that, yeah.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for your sharing, Joy. This was actually quite, yeah, your confidence was very inspiring. I've been speaking on this topic a bit with Pai today and Johanna and Italy. And yeah, it comes in waves for me, because it's a first child as well. So like the reality of it is somehow crashing, and sometimes it's just an idea, and sometimes it's so yeah, today has been a huge processing day, where I'm also hearing myself, how do I word out for example, my plan. I'm in my 20th week, yeah, so it's not like it's tomorrow, but since we found out, I've been thinking about how do I want the conditions, like how I know already what is very intertwined with birth, like inner dance is birthing and dying and birthing again, and actually it is, for me it is quite interesting when I think about my first inner dance experience. It was where I met Gisli for the first time, but yeah, laying on the mat, I actually went through labor. Like I didn't understand at all what was happening, but it was blissful labor. With strain, even really until afterwards, I realized that I was even taking my legs apart like this, and coming up, sitting up, and like physically pushing and feeling like something was coming through me so strong that was telling me to just do these things. And yeah, and that was one of my first experiences. So since then I've always felt that it's so evident, this relationship with the wave, and mother, like the mother, and the contraction and expansion, um, the fast and the slow together. And this happens, this is what is so, it's a inseparable part of what I know is going to be my experience of giving birth, is the inner dance. And I think it is very important that there are people in the room that know how to hold space from an inner dance perspective, even though I think a giving birth is always going to be that experience for a mother. Like for a woman to go through that process is always inner dance, whether there's someone who knows anything about the framework or not. but yeah, I'm very glad to have this call in this moment. We're just passing through Helsinki now, coming like on our way to Thailand, actually, where we're gonna do some inner dance and experience different perspectives, and allow also to go deep and feel what's happening in this process. I can feel a very lively individual, or a person, or like it's not a person yet. It's such a trippy process to have a small child growing within you, and from the moment of one cell meeting another, and then that many and the one is just literally happening within the body. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, would you like to add something?
Yeah. Yeah. Just of course excited to be support to Una, and she's it's really beautiful to witness this happening in the body, and it's really like really trippy. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And exciting, and yeah, I'm really happy to be part of this, and yeah, we're thinking like I'm thinking like and we're preparing like to have inner dance music, and that I can like edit the music and play it live like a session. Yeah, I think that will be an experience definitely, and something interesting, and I hope it will help, and yeah, so just to trying to also enjoy the process, enjoy everything around this experience. It doesn't happen that often, really. So, um, yeah, yeah, and yeah, it would be interesting to hear maybe and to follow up maybe on Joy's experience, and of course Pi has experience with facilitating, and what's the word?
Whatever.
Yeah, taking his children, like
Receiving.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, mother something, the word I'm looking for.
Mm.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, and midwife, yeah, he midwifed his 2 children, right? And that's it. That's the word. Yeah, and to hear maybe Joy's experience, and yeah, it's really really interesting to have this topic, and I really appreciate it, and yeah, it makes this really rich for us, I think. And yeah.
Yeah, just to think about the music, also to learn a little bit, like even though we're doing this during inner dance session holding, and we're familiar with how to hold the wave and do an inner dance live playlist. I think in relation to labor, and like when the contractions become shorter in between, and like how to slow, and when to play which frequencies, and like when to have the delta, and when to speed up rhythm and stuff is would be quite would be nice to like really clear, if we can go into these things also. Yeah.
Sort of also probably like an experience, like to see like in the process like what is working, and to work together also maybe in that, and yeah.
Okay, wow. It's so wild to really be in this conversation right now. Let's host this call together. But firstly, maybe I can just go into some advice giving for Joy right now that would be representational for women and mothers and fathers who would be interested in what is it in inner dance that could help in the facilitation of birth. we were speaking with Noha last year in Turkey, and she was talking about like dreaming about putting up a birth center, actually like in Palawan, where we're conducting these projects, and wherever these birth centers would be, it's not just a space. What we're interested in is what's the actual process, and what brought here together, because the energy that we hold is very much a birthing process. It's not easy to pin it down because it's such a big topic. So what I hope to do at least is to maybe help to make visible the invisible, and to apply some of the many learnings in inner dance to how to help, whether it be you are a doula, a midwife, you're a dad, you're a mom, a doctor, a nurse, or a baby. I feel that, especially like talking to Una today, the choices that people make are based on their actual understanding of what it is. So when we talk about the birthing process, there are these things that people have bias for. It's like the things that they watch movies over and over again. It's supposed to be painful. It's supposed to be horrible. You're supposed to do it in a hospital. You can't do it as an empowered person. Like I'm a little bit like able to speak about this because me and my ex-partner, the mother of my kids, we did use inner dance, and we did it by ourselves. We had no midwives, we had no doulas, we had no doctors. It was just us. And so it is practically the energy that held it. A big topic to hold would be about power. Power must be shared across the room. Like, who holds the power normally? It's the medical practitioner that holds the power. The mother needs to hold more of that power, and it would be amazing if the father could help the mother hold some of that power. A lot of the power is actually in the baby, but because the baby is not really just a human construct that's coming through, that power is coming from everywhere. So a lot of it begins with leveling out the power structure, which is very much an inner dance, which is very much a listening space. It's like the mother needs to be the one determining how the body needs to be positioned for one, but the baby is the one who would be the one to be listened to. The mother needs to listen to the baby, and once those instructions are given, she never knows how the body might be like shaped. There's a lot about shapes, that there has to be a particular shape that determines whether the mother would be like horizontal and a little bit vertical. Like for my two kids, my firstborn was born where the mother was like this, and then my daughter was born where the mother was like this. So a lot of that was actually based on how the baby was positioned at that exact time. Any woman who understands her body would be already, like you've done maybe most of the work. It could be 60 to 90% of the work. Inner dance is a lot of that work. So if you know your body, that means you'd be able to listen more. Italy helped with one birthing process, and I was there to witness. I tried to be as non-intervening as possible. I was actually in the room. I wasn't even in the birth space. I was just there to support just by being there in case they needed a driver. There were women there who have maybe cumulatively like a lot of births that they've assisted in as midwife and as like a traditional hilot, which is a traditional Filipino midwife. And what I found interesting there was, despite the immense experience that was in the European and local traditional Filipina, who was in charge of assisting the mother, it was actually Italy who stepped in, who had not had any experience of like helping with births, and who stepped in and said, can we change this music now? Because you're playing like super peaceful, she calls it shanty music, and it's been hours and nothing seems to be happening. So she whispered to the mother, do you want an inner dance playlist now? And then when she put that on, that's when the thing happened. So it was actually the one who didn't have the rules or the protocols or the box to keep her from the listening space, that was then able to whisper to the mother, do you want to change the vibe? Is there something missing? And the mother said, yes, do it now. And then later, there were conversations. She really said it actually helped. The playlist helped. And next thing you know, the baby was out. So there's a lot that goes beyond what is known. So I think there's a lot to share about that. So inner dance holds within its very structure an ability to take this beyond. And what I want to do is maybe I want to formulate what that might actually look like based on what is our current understanding now, given all the experiences like we've had with the birthing process. Johanna is the one helping Una with the birthing process, and she's gone through her own birth within an inner dance construct. She's helping other women right now. So later on, maybe when I give just a short gifting to Joy and to Una, we can, the ones who have had these vocations or advocacies to help women, to help mothers, to help families, love to hear from them. And then definitely we can formulate this. So I'm going to go to the board today. A lot of what I'm going to share is going to be super new. There are things that haven't been brought up in any of the past conversations in inner dance meetings that had to do with birth. Maybe I'll spend about 30 minutes, and I hope you like it. So firstly, I want to talk about the chemistries of birth. There would be so many chemicals there. A lot of them might be coerced, forced, programmable. A lot of them would be automatic. And I think without a clearer understanding of the chemistries of life, the chemistries of birth, the chemistries of emergence, we would just be making things up as we go along. We would be winging it. So I've been studying this for a long time, primarily because I've experienced it, and I've helped quite a few mothers as well to give birth. Some were successful, meaning they didn't have time to go to the pool. They didn't have time to turn on the music because the baby just like plooped. And then there were women who ended up in the hospital who just couldn't do it. So basically, there seems to be definitely conditions that would be determinant as to whether, like, would fear set in, or would trust be able to take this all the way through. And I feel that we don't need to generalize this. We don't need to be in the big gray area. We need to speak to all of it, the mind, the heart, and the body at the same time. So there would be just enough understanding, just enough love, and just enough intuition. When I was listening to Una speak about her birth process earlier, like she said, like, well, I've never done this before. What is going through my mind is, no, I mean, all women who have ever done this is part of your own legacy. So there's something in your body that's done this like how many times? Bearing life, conceiving life, birthing life. So I speak now as a masculine, like a father of my children, who can assist the feminine, who holds the capacity to tolerate pain, to hold that much love, to be the body powerhouse, the embodied powerhouse that can actually create a being from scratch and then like plop, send it out to the universe as something complete, intact, and innate. So yeah, having said all that, going back to inner dance, what would the inner dance contribute? And what is the role of the playlist? The playlist is not just about the sound, but the sound would be probably the most potent because sound is the least invasive. It means that the mother would be able to act and react from her own space. You don't need to push the person. You don't need to manipulate with words. You can hold a lot with words, but the sound does hold a lot more than the words. So vibration could still be a more potent space holder. A lot of which have influence on what rises up and what falls down. So I think one of the biggest things we would need to think about is balance. But so much about this process is not about balance. When you think about just how big this energy ball is, and it's supposed to be exiting through that, it doesn't really bear a lot of logic. Like circumstances where the cathartic moment takes place is it's exact. It's a very, very exact balance. I think my kids were lucky because their mother had already had previous births. None of them were natural. They were by epidural, they were by like operation, they were in expensive hospitals. But nonetheless, like she was brave enough to just brave it. So she was able to do it. We held music in the background, nothing too intense. It was light. And I think she didn't need intensity because she had a way of balancing the waves. Being there within the inner dance for so long, she knew how to hold it. So I think if we're going to be honest about this, what we need to address beyond fear and beyond trust is pain. That's going to be the issue. So if inner dance is going to contribute, inner dance needs to be able to address this, because once that comes in, the mind stops and emotions take over, physiological elements take over, and no matter how much you try to support someone who starts to go into an autonomic nervous system set of response mechanisms, it has a habit of just like scaling on and on and on. So if a mother, and definitely this is not like the typical joy that we're looking at. Most like a lot of women have nervousness and anxiety around this topic. So the first rule we've always had is it's really important what you allow into your space. Like the father needs to hold a very strong element for the mother to make sure that there's no fear, that there's no anxiety. Anyone who would utter a word, a sentence, or a paragraph that says you're doing something dangerous or weird, they shouldn't be allowed near the system. They shouldn't be allowed near the system, whether it be the month, the weeks leading to the moment, or the moment itself. So we were really, really careful about that. Like this, was the one thing we did. We just didn't allow any anxiety to come in. We heard like complaints, we heard like criticisms, we heard wow, what are you guys doing? Are you guys stupid? You know, it was just so repetitive because it had never been done in the Philippines, like an unassisted home water birth, let alone no one's heard about water birth in Palawan. In the Philippines, it's never been done publicly. There's not been a water birth that we've ever heard about. So it just broke the mold. So we didn't allow the energy to help change our minds because it just seems so simple. So this is maybe the most first basic thing. It's really important to sense what conversations are we allowing into the room. And if that's going to be held constantly enough, then already the success rate is like all the way up there. And so when we've trained and helped other women, this is all we said. And most of the ones who really took it in, they had no problems whatsoever. It just really plop. It just really happened. So there may be something to what I said about how Italy was able to assist the mother to break through even the fear states that were in the so-called professionals. Like it was actually quite impressive. But maybe if Italy wasn't able to speak to the mother the way that she did, maybe it could have lasted longer, or maybe she wouldn't have been able to do it. So the mother needs to be able to hold the room. But if the mother isn't able to hold the room, someone needs to be there to help the mother hold the room, who might have an intuitive understanding of the way the waves work. Let me go to the screen. I think this is better. This would be better. More visual. Okay, so maybe starting with the chemistries. Wait, why is this like a small screen? Okay, maybe there. All right. Oxy, the Y would be there. Sorry. Let's jot down a few chemicals that would come up normally in the birthing process. That also comes up in the inner dance. But in the birthing process, these would be, yes. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was wanting to say something. Prolactin, epinephrine, but I think this should be more norepinephrine or noradrenaline. What else would be there? Let's put GABA there. So oxytocin, a lot of people know it assists in the birthing process. It opens up the cervix, allows for the contractions to take place. So this is the one that's most often talked about. Oxytocin needs to go up or be released for the birthing process to ensue. Endorphins are important because they are related to addressing pain. Okay, endorphins allow for the reduction of pain, basically. Now, prolactin is mostly known to be that which allows for milk to be produced for when that's needed, but it actually holds some special roles in the labor process. But let's just put milk there for now. Norepinephrine would be about fear. Okay, so when you get triggered, then when that goes up, then norepinephrine and epinephrine gets sent out. GABA is usually not mentioned, but I'm just going to put that out there for now as a neurotransmitter, not just a hormone. And dopamine as well is interesting to look at. Okay, so what we initially would be interested in is what would allow for the release of oxytocin, and or what actually prevents that from getting released. Because when oxytocin isn't released at a particular timing, let's say there's a prolonged release of oxytocin, that's actually when medical practitioners start to intervene and give synthetic oxytocin like pitocin and what have you, so that the birth could be induced. But we need to trust the mother's body, and if it's not actually time to release oxytocin, it means the woman's not ready to give birth. And usually it's because there are certain conditions that's not yet right, that's not ripe. Let's go into the anatomical, let's see, let's go to the trunk. Been using these in the trainings lately. So the autonomic nervous system, as we might understand from our studies, would be that the sympathetic nervous system extends from the middle. It would be from T1 all the way to just here, T2. So fear and anxiety extends here, and trust would be here at the cranium and here at the sacrum. So then when we look at this from the urogenital system of the mother, okay, so this is the uterus, this is the ovaries, and this is the vulva. So already this is like, okay, that's where it's supposed to come out. So this is not exactly what we're picturing now, because the uterus in Joy's and Una's body would be like enlarged. So if this is the sacrum, already we're going to see that there's paradox or irony there, which would explain why the birthing process becomes a little bit difficult to conduct in many ways. Understanding, okay, we need to picture this well. Understanding that the parasympathetic trust system extends from the cranium nerves and the sacral nerves. This is where we're supposed to send out signals that we're supposed to relax, like here and here. But then going back to the urogenital picture, when this whole thing is like obese, is so enlarged that when the birthing process is supposed to start to happen, when the pressure starts to hit the pelvic bones, like the hip bone, and right before this starts to expand and change its shaping, if this is supposed to send out trust and relaxation chemistries right at the point where this is starting to experience pain, what would take place here is that when the nociceptors or the pain receptors start to receive signals that this is like, ouch, okay, this is starting to happen, it would need to send these signals to the hypothalamus. For those who are kind of recent in the conversations, the hypothalamus isn't reflected exactly here in this particular program, but it's somewhere here in the brain, in the subcortical regions. It would then be in charge of sending signals back to the autonomic nervous system, so that something like T lymphocytes would be sent there, so that an immunity response would take place. So you already have this paradox happening here, that this is supposed to open up and this is supposed to relax, but this is experiencing something horrible at the moment. It's experiencing pain. So what you might want to study, whether you be the one helping to hold the music, or a woman's body, or you're the mother yourself, you need to come into a kind of head or body space that allows you to work in the pain process, for one. So going back to here, and endorphins allow for the reduction of pain. The more you increase endorphins, the more you allow pain to decrease. And the increase of dopamine is actually what supports endorphins to do that action. And endorphins can be sent out both in the peripheral and the central nervous system. Now, here's what's interesting. When dopamine is increased, there's actually like a set of chain reactions that it just actually decreases oxytocin. So when it's purely about pain, the pain's taking over, pain's increasing, even as you increase dopamine, the increase of dopamine actually reduces the increase of oxytocin. Dopamine has many functions. As we know, it's the addictive chemical. It's the anticipatory drug, a lot of which is usable in inner dance process. So in a way, you actually need to decrease some dopamine even as you increase some dopamine. Dopamine is sent out through many parts of the brain system. So when you look at prolactin then, let's map this out. Prolactin is that which allows oxytocin to be, the release of oxytocin to be increased. But dopamine actually inhibits the release of prolactin. So one of the names of dopamine in some brain areas is actually prolactin inhibiting hormone. So if you increase this, you'll take care of the pain. The more the pain, then the more dopamine you need. The more dopamine you send out, the less prolactin you would actually release, which would then inhibit the release of oxytocin. So there are these correlations between these, so that when fear states, you can see how fear is the actual sponsor, because based on the pain avoidance model, a lot of which we've looked at in the inner intensives, the more you feel pain, the more you'll actually be afraid of that pain, and you will send that fear chemistry, norepinephrine and others like T lymphocytes, to tell your body that something wrong is happening. And the more you send that, the more it will create this feedback loop that will not allow oxytocin to be released. So you can then imagine that, okay, let's go back to the picture. A lot of it's happening here. So definitely, like the mother needs to not be in her head. The sacrum needs to be a higher intelligence, so that there would be this fight between the pelvic bones, the pelvic area, and the sacrum. The sacrum being the space that actually allows the parasympathetic nervous system to come about. Oxytocin isn't just the love hormone. A lot of people say it's the love hormone, but oxytocin is, in fact, what is responsible for trust. For you to release oxytocin, or for you to engender trust, like they go together. Like if you want to trust, then you need to release oxytocin. It's what allows for connection, for empathy to come about. And then if you trust, then you release more oxytocin. And the less you're trusting, because you might be scared, if your environment isn't right, if you're not getting the right support mechanisms, then the chances of oxytocin getting released at the exact time that the contractions are beginning to happen, and every contraction will bring about the sense of pain. And every time you feel pain, you're going to feel fear. But all of those are simply natural. They are supposed to happen. So the trick here is to make sure, or to hope, that even as this is inevitably going to go up, you need to actually then increase this all the more. So there is a reason why there are these conditions, like people need like dim lights, people need, let's say, certain types of music. There needs to be, let's say, encouraging like words. in the space, and just this strong presence of love and trust in the room, a lot of which then holds the release of oxytocin in the most organic ways possible. So if you were to build a playlist, these are the things that you would need to maybe consider. Oxytocin isn't just something that in fact slows down the it's not just an inhibitor. It's not just something that opens up the space. Oxytocin is implicated in anxiety. When people go into anxiety, there's actually high levels of oxytocin. So in the birthing process, there has to be this mode of catharsis, a cathartic element that maybe leads the way, so that you're not canceling out, let's say, this is gonna happen, this is going to happen, but there might be a certain mixture of things that allows for all of these to take place. So this is where I would bring up GABA, and maybe acetylcholine could be interesting. These are neurotransmitters and hormones that we talk about when we think of the parasympathetic nervous system, or that which inhibits or slows down the excitatory impulses that happens both like in the brain and in the body. So you would need to account for all of the chemicals in a way that even, let's say, as an energy goes up, something needs to be allowing it to go down. So when a contraction is happening, usually this is my style. When the contractions are starting to get longer and are spaced like quicker, like every 5 minutes the contractions are happening, and then it's every 3 minutes, and then that changes. Usually when a contraction is happening, that's usually when I hold an expansion. I normally, my style is, if I'm in the room, I would wait for the real push. But in fact, like when all of these systems are operating properly, you don't actually need to push. I don't understand why women are inclined to push, because when you do study the spine, the spinal system, and I was speaking to one of the most famous water birth advocates in the world, like Ibu Robin. We kind of met within this particular there was a meeting point between us, and it had something to do with the spine. Okay. I'll stop the screen a little bit just so I can demonstrate this. There are particular positions that women end up in when they give birth, and usually when the pain comes, they end up, let's say if it's in the pool, they end up with their head down, and then their arms be there to support, and then people are trying to support her. That's a very passive position. It actually might get the body into a more pain avoidant state when that happens. So you need to make sure that trust and active states are in charge, because there has to be a certain position. You will find a certain position. That's what makes this kind of an inner dance thing. And then you would need to find a certain movement so that the spine needs to go through a kind of spiral. Okay, because the spiraling motion would be in coordination with the spine of the baby, because then when you think about the way the head, the spine, and the lower extremities of the babies are formed, it needs to be very nonlinear. So if a mom knows how to listen to her body, there would be a certain movement, so that instead of pushing, there might be a little bit of a push. But how I've seen it really work is when you find that flow, with just the right combination of pain, of excitement, of love, of trust, of when you're not there anymore, you're literally like filtering everything out. You just are totally in the present moment of now. The spine will give way, and the baby will just visualize the joy. And Una, it needs to slip out. It's not gonna need to get pushed out. It just needs to slip out, and it's the positioning and the timing and kind of intensity and the sort of movement that allows that to slip out. So your biggest teacher is the spine. So there has to be a certain amount of oxytocin in the mother's body at that moment, and you need the playlister then needs to send signals to the baby that it's time. So norepinephrine in the baby's body actually needs to increase. So the mother's body, as it relaxes, the baby's body actually starts to excite upon the moment of birth. That's why the playlist needs to kind of hold the high and the low at a certain point. Because it's going to be a process. Let's say the active first stage would be about 3 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, 5 hours would be long. That's when the playlist would actually really be needed. I think to talk about the playlist, we would need to look at the musical element now. We would need to look at what would be a way to hold the music in such a way that that balance, which is not actually going to be balanced, it's going to be holding extremes. There's going to be extreme trust and extreme intensity. It's not pain. I've seen painless birth, and it's more of an intensity because you've got the endorphins coming through. And when you have enough of the endorphins, you won't actually be giving into the pain. So you have enough activity. You're not just giving into the pain, you're addressing the pain, you're confronting it, because the endorphins is allowing you to not actually feel this is pain. It just feels intense. There needs to be I think for us, what would make sense is the word rhythm. Okay, let's go back to this screen. It's more interesting to, I think, outline these in the written word, because then it becomes more clear, more visual. Okay, so when we talk about rhythm, what is it that actually holds rhythm in the body? Okay, we've spoken so much about the rhythms in the brain, or the central nervous system, which is coordinated through the circadian rhythms. There's also rhythms in the heart rate. Someone posted something about heart rate variability, and that's very much understanding that the heart has a kind of pacemaker. Let's say the lungs, this looks like a butterfly. the lungs also has a rhythm, since it's a breath has a rhythm. So there will be moments when breath rate and depth will be faster, and it will sometimes go slower and like deeper. There would also be the release of chemicals. Okay, this is the one that's not so obvious, because your chemoreceptors in the body won't be so easy to listen to at a particular moment of intensity. So this is just to say that at particular times of the day, chemistries in the brain would either go up or down. Heart rate would go up or down. Chemicals would go up or down. So what I like about the new findings about heart rate variability is that when there's more variability in heart rate, that means the sympathetic nervous system, which is fear, right? And the parasympathetic nervous system would have more variation. Okay, so rhythm here would mean the more the woman, the mother, is able to hold the slow and the fast together, there would be actually this greater ability to respond to situations. And when you're losing variability, that means you're not able to respond. So this is one way we can define what it means to be responsible. Okay, like what we want to give to the mother is responsibility, or the ability to respond. So what we would need to hold here would be, this is hard to imagine, so we need to go here, because okay, this can control this. This sometimes controls this, so that okay, I'm scared right now, then my brain would get hardwired to send out very anxious waves. And then it would affect the breath, and then it would affect the chemicals. So if you want to find a way to balance this out, what would be a governing body? What would be a central governing body? And so we've talked about the hypothalamus quite a bit. I need to make a black ink. This is white background. The hypothalamus is the part of the brain, very, very small. Actually, it's as big as an almond, and it's inside, that holds clocks, you know, the suprachiasmatic nucleus part. There are many other parts of the brain that control or regulate fear, trust, metabolism, immunity, hunger, thirst, sexuality. So in many ways, the hypothalamus is the one governor. In the last training, we called it the one ring that rules them all. If you remember the Lord of the Rings, there's one ring in the brain that rules them all. And it's a very, very small part. And through the power of music, inner dance usually is able to tap into or harness the power of the hypothalamus that can then control the brain, that can then send innervations to the heart, the digestive system, and in this case, the reproductive organs. So this chart here talks about the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary axis, which talks about fear or stress, which both of which are very relevant in the birthing process. So when fear and stress takes over, the adrenals would then be concomitant to the hypothalamus, so that a lot of the other roles or jobs the hypothalamus has in activating trust would be severely affected, and in general decreased. So in order to bring about love and trust, pain, fear, and stress need to be kind of dealt with. So I wanted to then share certain concept today that could help to activate the hypothalamus. And I wanted to show a video that took place last week in the training in the countryside that kind of explains this. So cross frequency, oh no, so I need to make this white again. Cross frequency coupling and phase amplitude coupling both talk about how the brain has this tendency of coordinating the super fast brain waves. So let's say this is gamma, along with the slower brain waves. Sorry, I misspelled that. It could be theta or delta, which should be more high amplitude but slower waves, like less frequency. So when you put those together, what you would have is a phase locking, a phase amplitude coupling kind of thing, where you would bring two frequencies together. I don't know if my sound actually works, but let me do another share. I'm gonna try to share the sound of my screen. And if it doesn't, it's okay. I can help visualize this. Let's see, let me choose to instruments. Okay, so all right. So I'm going to play two sounds at the same time. And I don't know if you can hear. Okay, so what I'm demonstrating here is that there are these two waves at work, the red and the blue. So when I add volume to the NTS1, what you have is a sine wave. I could look for other waves. This is a seesaw wave, triangle, and a square. So back to the sine. This is the pure wave. It's the more relaxed wave. And when you create a playlist where there's something constant, it could be more closer to bass, lower tonalities. What the brain would do is it would combine the red and the blue together. I don't know if you can hear that. So anyway, I'm going to leave that part, but I want to demonstrate. Wait. Got this monitor thing happening. What I want to demonstrate is what phase amplitude locking looks like, or coupling, sorry. So, I don't know if Susanna is still in this call, but we measured her brain using a portable EEG that we brought into the training. And I need to make some adjustments. So this was the, wait, sorry. What is happening here? Let me start a new file. And I think it's this one. Yeah, when you... All right, so this is where it begins. This is the left, this is the right. So in the beginning, like in the first minutes, you would see that the waves are going to be quite random. Like there are no recognizable patterns that strike out like in the beginning. So I would slowly turn on the brainwave markers so that we can see which ones are activating or increasing in amplitude or frequency. So she had her eyes closed and she was trying to work in this series of exercises that we were giving her. And Matt was playing a synthesizer in the background. So I want to show you what phase amplitude coupling looks like. So when you look at the purple waves, this is alpha band power. And okay, this just keeps going. So you would start to see this particular pattern. This is phase amplitude coupling. In the beginning, what we're looking at is generally just cross-frequency coupling. So what I'm sharing with you here is, this is what an inner dance brain looks like when it begins to enter a wakeful REM state. So here you can expect that alpha would once again go into a spike just about now. And this is just to help Joy, Una, and anyone else working on this to visualize what it means to. Okay, so I think that's going to be a little bit clear. What holding space means, holding the super fast and the super slow, even like slower than that would be like delta. So I'm gonna stop all the sharing of images parts. What I want to point out is going through all those explanations, you can try to control as much as you can the the thing about the woman's body and like the chemicals, but vibrations hold a part in regulating pain, regulating fear, regulating trust, regulating relaxation. So how I'm trying to simplify this for mothers in general, and right now to you and Una and to you, Joy, you don't have to worry about so much if you could trust that that which you've been doing now, holding space for others, holding space for yourself, you've been tapping into the hypothalamus for all this time. You've been training yourself for all this time. And you do now have a way of going instantaneously into phase amplitude coupling when you hold the slow and the fast together. Susanna was able to do that by closing her eyes in a really busy, noisy room where a lot was happening. So that even as anxiety is there, when there's enough relaxation, when there's enough expansion, even as the contractions are happening, the body will know when it will be time to raise oxytocin levels, therefore quickening contractions, lengthening the number of contractions taking place in duration, and then lessening the gaps between them, so that by the time you are feeling that you're allowed to push, you can tap into your noradrenaline levels, knowing that the dilation of the vulva has happened enough that it's just going to slip out because the right conditions are there. So I think it would be really interesting to understand how anyone might support that space. And if with Joy, it would be that the mother herself would be the one that holds this kind of technology. Like the others might hold a different technology, so you might need to step up and let yourself be heard when it is the right time. With Una, because her partner is an inner dance space holder as well, then I could see him conducting the music live. He still has quite a few months to prepare. And I'm hoping that this particular conversation helps him to formulate what the playlisting would be like, because I do believe that one needs to have a certain vocabularization. You can't just be simple. So what Italy was able to do to assist the birthing of our friend was to bring variation when variation was missing. There was just the super relaxing songs, and the mother just couldn't let go because there was a lack in variations. So in that sense, the one really holding the space is vibration. And if there's enough variation in vibration, there would be that ability to respond, because the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system are able to hold both in balance and homeostasis and in check. So that's basically what I have to share. that's very particular to inner dance. I hope this at least empowers those of you who are about to go into this and take away some of the anxieties that's there. So it could get to the point where you could play any sound there and you'd be able to hack this, to just wing this. So if maybe Joy or Una or Gisli wants to reflect on certain things that's been happening in their bodies listening to this, you can start with them and then we can go into those who are really active in this topic to see what they can contribute, what they think, and how we could just keep building something out of these. Start with Joy. Joy, what do you feel?
Thank you for sharing. Well, I'm sitting in a Pilates ball right now, so it's been really helpful to like let the energy go through, and kind of start tapping into that modality that I had already been pondering of like, okay, this is an openness that has to come from this ability to hold space and allow, like in this case, not something but someone to come through. I feel like it's super helpful to look at the hormonal dance and just create this mindset of like, okay, this is going to be simultaneously happening and there is no need for any of those factors to cancel each other out. So I feel like this, again, mindset of holding paradox, it's really the way to go. And it's helpful for me to go back in my mind to moments where I feel like I have done that, to moments that I feel where my mind and my body has been going through thresholds of training, of just stepping into the power of being like, okay, you know, this is the moment to really lean into the situation, to really go there. So with that being said, I still wonder, because in the case, for example, of Una, is lucky that her partner could maybe do the inner dance playlisting live. But when it's not the case, I've been thinking about how to structure the playlists in a way in which they could be useful for a process that can be so dynamic and so different for every woman. And what kind of comes to mind is what doulas teach is like the 3 different phases of labor. So like I don't remember the exact names, but like the beginning part, and then the active part, and then the part in which you're actually, the baby is actually coming out. And there needs to be, I feel like, kind of a different just mix of brain waves and just moods for all of these to take place, and all of these are necessary. I also have heard that it's better to have a quick birth because then you're not burning all your energy out. And I feel like maybe having 3 different sets of playlists for each different stage could be helpful in the sense of like, okay, one can then have the autonomy or the authority in that moment to be like, okay, I'm going to play this one for a little bit, then this one for a little bit, then this one for a little bit. And that could be maybe a model that could be also helpful for many women, regardless of how long their own particular birthing process is taking. Maybe being able to loop like the first stage or the second stage or the third stage as many times as one needs, or like make it shorter, kind of like, you know, start it and stop it. That's what comes to mind for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so first stage has two parts. First stage would be early labor, and that would be anything from 6 to 12 hours. For some women, it's actually longer. So that's when they tell the mother, okay, go home first or go do your thing, and then we'll wait for the contractions to start happening longer. So that instead of like 30 minutes apart, they'd start to near to 15, 20 until they're becoming like 5 minutes apart. Then they last maybe more than 45 seconds long. So I would say the playlist should start more in this more active first stage of labor. This is not yet when transition is happening. Um, Dilation is not yet so, it's not going to happen because it's not open enough. So first stage active labor could last like 2 hours. That's fast already for some women. 1 hour is super fast. For my ex-partner, she was super fast. I would say active labor was just 1 hour. But she did not need the impetus of a playlist that had like this super active thing. She just waited and found a way. So I have a little bit of concern as to preempting how long it would take. That's where I'm having a hard time. So as a safety net, when I did create the playlist for you, I played it safe enough so that if you play that on soft, somewhere between soft and moderate volume, not loud, it would give you time to at least play with the waves, because the waves should already be happening in your body, but you need just enough to okay, so going back to, let's say, the screen. Okay, I think it's this one. What we would need to wait, how come my okay, so my pen doesn't seem I know why. I took away the cord. So just maybe somewhere here in the middle, say I have a picture that describes it. It's this one. It's just messy, but let's say it's this one. Melatonin, which is the dream chemical. Melatonin would only come out when when it's time to go to bed. So melatonin usually runs counter to cortisol, but you would need to activate that. So for some mothers, I observe that they're able to send out melatonin because they're just exhausted. They're just super tired. So like I would use inner dance to bring people into dream states, so that the sound is there just to help people get into their body and not stuck in their head. And when we say stuck in their head, usually we mean they get anxious and then they go into the adrenal axis, meaning then they're sending out norepinephrine, they're getting anxious, they're getting afraid. So because you don't have a DJ, you don't have an actual facilitator there, that means you now have to belong to this model where the mother needs to hold herself as strongly, so that even as you will have so much strong support, you've got your husband there who's already quite amazing to begin with, quite a warrior kind of person. Then you've got your big team there, because what you're interested in here isn't just the human touch and all those other normal human support systems. What you're interested in is vibration, and based on neuroplasticity, because you've already trained your system to go into the waves. Anytime in the past that you've gone through a catharsis, a healing process, a transformation that's vibratory in nature, you've been training yourself. So that's what your body knows to do. You can't train yourself to simply do something else that's a new thing when you've already grown into like a certain combination of frequencies. And because that's not going to be so knowable to others, what you would have control over is at the very least volume control. So I don't know if you can control that through an Apple Watch or just having the phone nearby or just telling someone, okay, it's too loud. Okay, just softer. What's going to happen is a lot of the people who are in the room will also start to vibrate their own thoughts, their own intentions. So the music might need to be not so loud that it triggers those who would be in their own supportive yet control mechanisms. And it helps you enough that you're also in the like the space between active labor and then the transition state which be the second stage. The third stage should already be like pushing and then into placenta delivery, and at that point you're already quite good. What's critical is usually the active stage labor, because it would set the stage for when they call it pushing, that stage. And I'm not even advocating pushing in that regard. So you're gonna have a mixture of stuff there. If you are really amazing and relaxed in active stage, first stage active labor, then probably you got like all these chemistries at work, that there's oxytocin rising, and you know your endorphins are rising. You're not really succumbing to the pain avoidance mechanism. Then transition and actual birthing would probably be a lot easier if you can just manage that first more intense parts, which is usually what becomes really hard for women, because it does tend to get quite painful. It's like a menstruation times 10 or 100 for some women who are receiving a lot of this norepinephrine fight or flight frequency, and they're not in and being enveloped with like a lot of trust in the space. One other thing that releases oxytocin is exercise. So if you really just have access to your body movement, like in a certain way, I don't know to what conditions and how much you're gonna have that space. Just hearing you speak, you've got this already, like so much. So I gave you the playlist. I could try to improve on it. Others in the community might be able to come up with something qualitative. Just have enough of that, because you're not alone in the room. I mean, you are top priority, but just find enough volume so it doesn't need to be too loud, that you have melatonin at least being sent out, that then helps the co-activation. Melatonin is what would definitely balance everything out. Enough inhibitors, enough excitatory chemistries, so that you'd be somewhere there, you know. Yeah.
Do you feel yes.
No, Joy, go. You are
Yeah.
in a dialogue.
Do you feel like it's important? I mean, I don't know how possible this would be, because it's a 10-hour playlist. But to maybe look for a chance for other people in the team to go through the playlist as well before the birthing process, because I kind of imagine, you know, for people who have never been in touch with inner dance playlist, that could be just thrown into their own process.
I was conservative. It wasn't it's not something that would scare people. I made sure of that, knowing that you wouldn't be alone. Noha just said she did it today. It was good. I made sure that this would not be so wild to begin with. And that's also for you. I considered them and I considered you. I don't think you need that much. So if you're going to go into an intensity, it's because your body holds that music. So I don't think you need to worry about them in any way whatsoever. You just need to speak up as early as now that, okay, I've been doing this thing. This thing is part of all this, and it's just going to be there. Whatever else is going to be there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I can share
Yeah.
few words.
Now let's converse with everyone.
Just to relate to what Pai was sharing before, just few insights that I feel I learned from the inner dance birthing experience, and then also to look at, like, from my perspective, where I never gave birth myself. I've been pregnant once 20 years ago, and then I have super intense like endometriosis menstruation, where I go through this like extreme pain, which my mother went through, and she said it's kind of the same process than giving birth, but 10 times more when you give birth. So I've done a lot of process monthly with the playlist, but then so I could see very similar things when we had the inner dance birth happening. And I've talked before about the music, and Pai shared something about it, just what happens when it was like 8 hours trying to relax the mom, and then what happened when it was even too relaxing for me, and I felt the space is trying to relax something that was actually waiting or wanting to just surrender and release certain things and tensions in the mother. And that's why I did ask her, because I also felt it in my body that it's just like there's something pre-planned in the space that was not actually happening in that moment. And then she said it was a game changer for her when in the end we put the playlist on, and then I was DJing just a few songs after the playlist, and the baby came in like I think it was 1.5 hour playlist, and then 10 minutes, and then the baby came. But regarding I think that my insight or learnings was huge about being in the space and the team. And I have huge respect for the midwife. She's amazing. She's done it for many, many years. She's helping so many moms. And then also the Filipino midwife. So for me, I was amazed how amazing job, like how much knowledge they have in a situation where they examined something and they felt, okay, the baby is in the wrong position. So they were able to move it. And it was just 3 of us in the space. And I was just asked to, I don't know why the couple felt intuitively that they want to have me in the space based on an inner dance retreat. They were with us in Maya. And I had no idea. I had no idea what is it looking like, or how is it to actually be in a labor and the birth. So I didn't even know when I entered the space, like, how am I going to support it? The only kind of thought or idea I had was that I'm not going to interfere. Like, I'm not going to do anything in the space what is not asked from me. So I'm not going to put there any like efforts or ideas or my own anything. So I was just and we talked with the couple that I'm in service. I'm kind of the inner doula without any doula education, but I'm going to support them as much as I can, whatever they feel like. I was heating the water. I was just holding the space for them, being there because they asked me to be there. And then a few moments, there was some insights where, for example, the Filipino midwife, who have a lot of experience about birth, said to the mom, like, okay, now it's coming, so you should push, like push, push, push. And then the mom was listening to one advice that was saying, oh, you should push now because the baby is coming. And then the German midwife was saying, no, it's not the time. She shouldn't push yet because actually she's not so open. So they had like a different opinion based on their own subjective experience. What should happen? What should the mom do? And then there was some other occasions. There was not so much interference, but like few times when I was just observing and being in the space, and I realized that if I would be the mom and if I would be in that situation and other people say to me based on their feeling what I should do, it actually distracts me for listening to my own birth process. And in that space, there was really little interference, and they were only like interfering based on their own knowledge or profession or studies or previous birth experiences. So, and then it's interesting because the midwife, she supports a lot of nowadays free birthing, which means that the couple doesn't have anyone in the space. So it's also kind of a thing, I think, for midwives to look at it, that what does it mean that I'm not needed even in the space, even I'm trained for this and even I want to be there, but what does it mean to give up my own power as knowledge of a midwife to actually support free birth or natural birth, which might mean that the more important thing for animal or human being is to listen to the actual process we're going through. So that was kind of eye-opening. I don't know if I'm ever going to give birth. I'm also 40 soon, and it's like yes or no, 50-50, maybe not. But I've been processing a lot these things, that if I would, what would I wish from the team or from the moment? And one thing would be, like I said to Una today when we talked, that because we don't know also how the others are reacting and doing in the room, and even being like a space holder for being a partner, or Gisle might just faint, who knows, what anyone who would say like, okay, I can hold the space for you, but because we are also coming from a personal space when things are happening, so we don't know how every one of us as a group space what's going to happen. So I said to Una, like, only that thing that I would feel would be to ask the people in the room or the team to actually not interfere if it's not really needed, if they don't feel that it's or if I don't ask for it, because then it would allow me to listen maybe more in my own process. So even the doulas and the midwives and the doctors or whoever, if there could be like a pre-talk, because I did felt when I observed the birth process that it is confusing for the mother to first of all, they had studied a lot about birthing, and I think it's good to understand, but then there's also like your mind is so active thinking how she was a first time birther, so of course she had so much also studies that she had done to be able to understand what is next, what should happen. And then the moment we put the playlist, it was already maybe 12 or 15 hours. We had been in the process with the pool and the space. I think there was more like a process between the mind and the body, and surrender and holding tension in her body in partly. And when she was allowed to have a little bit more intensity with the music, she said that was the first time she could kind of surrender and actually let go. And that was the moment when she was able to kind of let go of her ideas or the birth team ideas, what's happening, and then go into her process where the baby was actually the one kind of midwifing herself out. So yeah, so there's some kind of fine balance, like how would we talk as a birth team? So I think this is a super interesting study for all of us, because we might be holding women who are pregnant, or families or couples, even we might not give birth ourselves, so we might not witness the actual birthing, but how could we even talk about this theme as part of like holding this kind of process and energy? So like, what could be talked before about trust, about like, okay, this is my wish, about how I'm hoping even the people wouldn't know inner dance at all. I don't think it really matters, because I feel it's more about the allowing the process to be what it is, and the interference and the speculations and analyzing in the space, which feels that starts to create the fear, and it doesn't create the trust. So there's maybe more like what could be the pre-talks before the birth, if we don't have exactly people who's been supporting kind of like a free birth or gentle birth or inner dance type of births before, and then talk something about the sound or the intensity of the playlist, or the moments that the process is actually not relaxing, or it's not like gentle, it's actually pretty intense. And then also the waves of the playlist can support that, the intensity, like the release and the contraction and the relaxation can happen, and it can support that. But yeah, there's something about I think it's a lot in my field when I'm hearing also my really close friends giving birth home or hospital, that there is the biggest thing seems to be about how much interference and how much they're allowed to actually just trust themselves, and how much we can trust ourselves, and then other people around us to say like, you can, you know the best, or the baby knows the best, instead of giving opinions. So that was something big, actually, what I was looking at a lot, trusting all of us. But yeah, sending much love to the process. It's really, really amazing. Soon happening. Thank you.
Amazing. Noha, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the playlist because Joy was like asking like how can she manage the free playlist, and I feel like I already knew that by holding space, but as well this is what happened to me today. Like whenever the wave was not going with what's happening in my body, I use my breath and movement and sound. So if you're in the middle of a surge and you feel like you need more energy, you can use your own you create the rhythm which will ride over the playlist, and then it can create actually maybe a wider scale where you're holding different brainwaves at the same point, or you can even go like very calm and slower, so you kind of like go like with a slower breath and like more like softer sound, so you're getting more into the delta. So you can actually, even if the playlist is not 100% like mirroring what's happening in you, you can always like create different sounds as you go, so you're kind of like playing as you're going, like you're creating your own music. So that might be very helpful. Like this is what happened to me today, and I realized like my body was responding more than interfering.
Yeah. There's something about the new playlists that are quite different from what we're normally used to. I don't want to go back to the maps, but when I showed the phase amplitude coupling concept, alpha normally speds out from the thalamus region, and then it's sped out. So it's the in-between. Alpha's in between delta and gamma. And there's some musical concepts there where the slow holds the fast, and that's why there's like a pattern that starts to take place. So the new playlist holds a lot of super deep and super high vibrations at the same time. They're not so much like they don't hold so much like intense waves and then relaxation and then intense waves. There will be those. There will be enough, but you should be able to carry yourself enough throughout this that no matter what's happening, it's going to happen. It is true though that because we are like studying the concept of entrainment, which means that what is happening outside influences what's happening inside. You can ride the waves based on what is helping to carry, but at the same time, you should have enough agency to be able to allow your body to determine. Yeah, and just enjoy. Una or Gisli wants to share. Let's hear from them.
Yeah, super interesting and really useful. I think it's like, as per usual, it's like to do less, really. and not to get carried away with like having some ideas or like just sort of more like intuitive, and in a way it's not so different from, it's a process, definitely, like to give birth, I assume. So it's kind of similar probably to hold space in a setting, in a dance setting. So what I thought would be also useful is to what is essential is to sort of be in that we are like connected, and also to maybe have the same understanding of the like what means if when I ask for something, like I don't know, faster something, music, like what does that mean? And maybe, okay, she can maybe say, okay, maybe something in that folder or this folder or whatever, but and also maybe to for me to hold space like repeatedly, and then sort of like trial and error in the next coming months.
Gisli earlier told me in Italy, and maybe Una as well, what if we just did it by ourselves without even midwives and doulas in the room? So now there's a lot of options opening up for this couple. And I think a lot of that belongs to the fact that you do have each other who understand the energy simultaneously. Una, do you want to share?
Yeah, I think this is I mean, often like the vibration is in the room, in like when you describe it in a dance setting, it's like it's a constant realization of myself, like for myself as a space holder of with inner dance, is that I don't need to do, act, touch, do la la la, like it is the less the less is more approach often that is the realization. It's actually that thing of like giving space to what is happening. Maybe you have maybe it's like really reading it. And I think this is coming back to what I maybe described in the beginning, is that it's the wave of, without having experienced it fully in this life and this body, an actual birthing of a child, I still feel like it's something so familiar. And it does feel like I've almost experienced it. And it does feel that my body would know. And I am lucky to have would understand to give space for that knowing to come through, that he is not needed to do and I am not needed to push. Like that's also a realization for me, like maybe I'm not, maybe as the one also facilitating the birth, the action, facilitating with my body this birth, it is something maybe that it's not so much of an action of like, now I'm gonna give birth to this child, as in like I'm gonna labor this and labor that. And I actually reflected on this word labor also in English, like, oh, labor, it's such a dense word of that it's heavy work, that you have to do a lot, I don't know, these concepts are sort of like floating, and like I'm having new sort of I feel it's coming a lot down to that one word, trust, which is so essential in inner dance and in this and in in life. Yeah. And and the music, you know, I feel also about music. Yeah, we have a library, we have a something we would call a library of songs, but I also like the word vocabulary of sound, like, because now we are using different mediums, and I would love to practice through the next months with those apps and with instruments that are holding less, you know. I might be really like, I can just feel it already without being in a birth process, but I feel songs are loaded with a lot of story and emotion that are not often what is being spoken in the room, and it's confusing more than lifting or supporting. So yeah, that we can, you know, we can embrace our library and we can also welcome something that speaks this vibration quite. And like, even though you would be trying out new apps, I don't know, I think it would be fine, you know.
To something surprising.
Yeah. But speaking up and trusting my body, yeah, speaking up if there is something coming that needs to be said. But it's a huge shift within me, because I said something today to Pi, was I'm always like, I feel like I have to speak, you know, the right way when I'm in the state of carrying a child. Like, I cannot be, you know, cocky about, even before we got pregnant, if I was speaking with someone, like, I would say, you know, if we, yeah, let's say if God allows, or like, if we are happy, if we're so lucky to, if, you know. And I know that within me, I knew this would happen for us, and I knew it would be even like that it would happen soon. But I thought it would be right and more humble to speak about it, like, yeah, only if we are blessed to have a child. And now as I'm pregnant, I speak about giving birth in the same way, like, yeah, only, yeah, if there are no complications, if there's, you know, if yeah, like saying so many ifs, and like being like talking a bit in this way of like not taking it too much for granted, that it's going to be that is going to be everything, you know, everything fine. Like, I think I know really medium amount of like knowledge around birth giving. I don't, you know, I haven't studied, I've just read a little bit, and there is a lot to know. I could also get really focused, and almost, maybe even almost too obsessed about reading and like, you know, collecting knowledge to create this trust, or to create some sort of security. But yeah, I can feel a deeper trust now, and I just know that my body and this child will grow together in this process, and then when we will have that event, is going to go the way it should go. And maybe we don't need all the people that we thought about in the beginning, and maybe we do, maybe we actually will have, but they might be different ones after our conversation today. We might not need to have professionals, if you could, yeah, we might not need those educated, since they don't always even they don't always match either. Like Italy was saying, they don't always, you know, who went to which school and what should rule. Like, just back away a bit, because I'm in the process of doing something, and it's about what I think is right now, and for this child, what this child needs right now. So I'm just, yeah, I'm processing. I'm very grateful for this dialogue and the conversation and everything on music. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Noha, you raise your hand again.
Yeah, I have like actually some things that I wanted to add if we have the time. So I love the question that you asked when you were doing your presentation about like how inner dance can affect the birthing process. And although I have never attended the birth, never gave birth, but I've never attended a birth in my life. But when I was taking the doula training, like I actually knew everything from my journeys. Like it was embodied as if I gave birth multiple times. Like I feel like I'm so passionate about that, and it started like in 2018 in the womb room in Maya. So I kind of like felt giving birth with a lot of processes, and I truly believe like even our self-talk can be an intervention, not just the people in the room. So one of the things that I really learned in inner dance is to listen, and actually like not even listen, like the body wisdom started awakening that it takes over. And I feel like that would be like the perfect state to give birth, to allow the body to move and the baby to move. I remember like when we were doing the womb room, I kind of relived my birthing experience as my mother and the baby. And there was a lot of like my message was to trust my body, because my body is what got me out, not my mom, because my mom had she had a lot of interventions, so she wasn't feeling what is happening, and it was my body. And I feel like with the amount of like inner dance we had, we can have that space of trust. And I feel like one of the things that was very interesting to study is they've linked the brainwaves to birthing. And it feels for me like it was a very kind of linear drop from beta to delta, where you go into alpha, where you open your sensuality, whether by movement, by hot water, by smells, by dimming the light, and then moving into theta. And this is most of like the space where the body takes over and it moves. And then if you manage to hold that like delta in that intensity, which doesn't happen frequently, you can actually open like cosmic birth, where women have like those experiences of ecstasy or connection. And it's not just about pleasure in terms of like orgasms, but kind of like going into that space of Akashic records, which I feel like most of us had visited in one of our dances, where we're one with everything. And there's a lot of knowledge that they're trying to acquire, but it's really hard to have like all those things around the mother giving birth, especially that this would need her to move. So I feel like it's starting, like that is something that they're starting, but it just felt to me like the drop is very linear, and it didn't feel right when I was experiencing those things. It just feels like the brain keeps kind of like having the wave. Another thing that I really wanted to share as well is that it's not just about the oxytocin that the body secrete when we're when we're giving birth, although like by the time the woman gives birth, it's like the highest oxytocin she would ever experience just right before breathing the placenta. But as well, when we give something like pitocin, which is the synthetic one, it doesn't go through the brain, like the brain and the membranes. So the woman gets a lot of contraction, because oxytocin and pitocin helps in the contraction to get out the baby without having like this sensation of connection or love, as well as the endorphins go down. So like it just felt like having interventions like epidural and pitocin can really be sometimes so traumatic, more than actually something that's in birth. And that's why like gentle birthing or water birthing can be something very amazing. And as well, I heard a lot about pushing. And I know like in like what I remember about seeing movies, you know, like there are women around and they're like, push your baby out, push your baby out. And actually, like if the woman started pushing when her body doesn't want to push, there will be a lot of tears. And this is why like there can be stitches, because what happens is a reflux. It's called pushing reflux, when the baby's head just sink enough in the pelvic floor, and then it pushes on the pelvic floor, and then the pelvic floor have like the surge of pushing. I've experienced that multiple times in inner dance, where I just like was extremely quiet, and then something came on me, and I was either like having like energy or screaming, or just this sensation of like the animal took over. So I really know that like that can happen in the birth if we really allow it to. So going back to Italy's conversation about should she push now? Is it 5 centimeters? Is it 10 centimeters? Like that, I feel like we have to trust that that will happen when the baby is in the right position. Other than that, we're pushing in the wrong position, which can create a lot of complications. And another thing that I really wanted to as well, that usually in birthing, they ask women to go like put their head down, which is a very submissive position. And actually, like when the pushing surge comes, she just like brings her head out. And I remember like we talk a lot in inner dance about like curving the spine. And I was wondering like I've experienced that with people, like they're just their head goes down, and then there's a lot of things happening in the body at that moment. So that was interesting, because today, Pai, you were talking about like the spinal cord, the upper and the lower.
Yeah, the cranium and the sacrum.
Yeah, so that was like kind of, actually it made sense, like the body knew, you know. Yeah, and I feel like as well, like oxytocin is one of those hormones that invite us inward. So like the more it comes, the more we go inward, and the more inward we are, the more the body starts moving, and then it releases more oxytocin. So one of the very interesting things about birth, they call it the 3 R's, where are relaxed, rhythm, and ritual. And when I was thinking of them, actually, like, I feel like that's my inner dance, you know, like in the beginning, we kind of relax the body, and then the rhythm starts. And the rhythm can be like the energy, the rhythm can be the sounds, the whatever happens in the room, and the ritual, we always hold it in terms of just creating that space. So there was a lot of mirroring that I've already seen when I was studying of how inner dance already can be like a very non-intervention, very gentle way to prime the body and to prime the mother to first like trust her body and build that innate wisdom of the whenever the body moves, like it's the right movement, because we experience that a lot. And even if it's not just the movement of the body, it's the movement of the energy. Yeah, so it was really like it was a blessing having this conversation today, when everything feels so alive and so fresh in me. So I just wanted to kind of like add to that. And yeah, I agree, like the mother has to, like, she's the one that's holding the baby, and the baby is exactly guiding her how it needs to move, you know, like if you have a ring and it's not coming out, you don't cut your finger, like C-section, and you just wiggle a little bit, you know, and it gets out. And if the mother is listening, like she, like even preach baby can move in less than an hour just by the mom moving forward, which happens automatically if the mother listens to her body. So I realized there was a lot about body wisdom when I studied birth that I actually learned from being an inner dancer. Thank you.
Yeah, wow. Flor, if you're raising your hand.
Yeah, Noah is on fire. Hi. Yeah, there's a lot about being an inner dance facilitator and being in a birth that feels it's kind of the same. I've been to birth, but the first birth I've been at was Pai's ex-partner, the mother of his children, and she happened to know her body so much. So it was a very easy birth, I would say, and I didn't expect it to be something else in other birth. And it's the same as inner dance, that everyone journeys very, very differently. I was blessed to be, when I was living in Costa Rica, that my neighbors were birthing on their own. So our way of holding space on the farm is that we leave the woman alone, and then we all hold space in our own houses in silence. Like I almost know when it's like it's coming, and then I count a little bit more time and I know that the placenta is out, and then I bring the tea. And it feels like a really amazing experience in the past year while I was living there. But one thing I would like to, not everyone can do that, like just solo journey, but I think that takes a lot of surrender and inner space holding. But as I've heard from them, from my friends, that it's also super, super, super empowering, that even their husband, they kick their husband out, like only the dog or the cat is allowed in the room. One thing I would like to add to what Ituli said is the pre-talk. I think is very, very important. One of the births I've been at in Costa Rica was my friend. She was actually, she goes to me for voice activations, for light language, for inner dance. So her body knows and trusts me very well. Her baby knows and trusts me very well in the belly. But everyone in the room didn't know me, didn't know what I was, who I am and what I do. Me to hold space for the sound, but when I was playing some inner dance music, the people didn't, as I said, they didn't know inner dance and they didn't know me, so there was no trust from the space holders or the other people, the mother being the main space holder. So at some point I stopped the songs and they wanted to play their songs. So what I did in that 39-hour birth was I just sat in the corner, and it is a dome. Their house is a dome. So I can be in the other side of the dome, and you whisper and it can be heard in the other side. So I said, I'll just sit in the corner. And most of the night I was just watching and I was just supporting energetically. And I could see how the pre-talk or the knowing each other, because we had a review afterwards in the car when we all went home, that I said, I realized that we didn't know each other. We didn't know our guests. We didn't know what we're doing. They didn't know what I do. And it was hard for me to help. But then I was told by the midwife and the doula that they felt I was holding space for the two of them. And I was holding space through my silence. And that really reminded me how in an inner dance space as well, we don't necessarily have to be holding the space physically. We can learn to be the almost the main energetic space holder, like Pi would always do, just being on the iPad and be holding space for the whole room. And that was very powerful to hear. And as I said, I stopped talking, saying anything or playing any music, but when it became quite chaotic, it's because of the many voices and many touches and many injections and many all sorts of medicines in the room. At some point, we cleaned up the whole house. We removed the pool, we cleaned the whole house, and we all went to sleep. We said, let's all sleep. This is on the 31st hour, because we were all so tired. It was so messy, everything energetically messy, like sleep. It's like a reset. And then it was a wild dream for me. I felt in my dream that she was birthing. And then I think that when we all went up, and then she was ready and she was at the toilet. So we all went to the toilet, was sitting on the toilet. And when I was hearing them say, push, 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 the baby was slowly crowning. It's just slowly going down, down, down. And I didn't control myself anymore. And I gave my grandmother singing. And when I started singing, which for the inner dance is like when we do like really strong sounds, and very, very shamanic sound. The girl, the mama, being very connected to my voice, started doing her earth sounds. And when she started really doing these deep, deep earth sounds to kind of resonate with me, that's when the baby came out. And as Noha said, like, the mother is the main space holder. Isa, our midwife in Maya, actually, I always remember what she says. A good midwife is the one that can sit at the end of the room and watch the birth, because she has already done her job, because the job during the birth is for the baby and the mother's body. So it's the mother being the co-main space holder for the birth, can use the sound of her own body, of her own voice, and of the earth itself, and have that main playlist through the body. And I think that's very, very powerful to have the freedom to do that. And that really, really helps a lot in my experience. Yeah, that's all. And good luck to the birds.
Wow. Okay, anyone else would like to share? So much has been spoken already. This is such a rich conversation, and we're really hoping this helps you, Joy and Una. Like it's not going to happen next week or 2 weeks. It's always been happening, but in a way, talking about inner dance, maybe it happens here, and it's tomorrow and the day after, and already the right combinations, the conditions of possibility are all like coming through now. Yeah. So anyone else would like to share, and then we can close soon, so we can give mamas and babies a rest.
Hello.
Oscar, yeah.
Well, it's been a very deep listening from the male energy, listening to the female wisdom, and in my case, I just want to say that I'm fat that I was in the birth, but it wasn't a natural thing. So for me, my experience was very bloody. I was layer by layer of the womb with the camera being there, how the doctor is cutting the belly, opening the membranes, being there, being this show of blood and stuff so aggressively, but having faith in my heart that everything is under control. And after I go with my daughter to the place where they clean them, and I had a belief that I want to share here, because years before, she had 14 years old. Years before, I was in a process that I believe, for the results that I have in my health in that moment, that I was in kind of connection with something or some spiritual influence, the Archangel Raphael. And I received in a dream that I have to say to my daughter, you come from the light that you are. No. You come from the light that you are, and I receive you in the light that you and me, we are together. And when I did this, I have a photograph. She stopped crying. She has the thing in the nose for the cleaning, and she moved, and she opened her eyes. And this was the signal to me that I didn't have to put there all the vaccines. So my experience has to do with another thing. And I want to say this with so much honesty. I'm not here trying to impress him or whatever. It's my Google story. But it was very good. She's enjoying a powerful health. She's doing sports, piano, chess. She's one of the new citizen chess player right now in the state of the country where I am. And fortunately, the next year we will be together here in Mexico, living together. But well, I'm just impressed to how much beauty and how much chaos these two extreme polarities. For me, this is exactly like the main thing that I take away. How understanding this powerful, divine, and human biological moment, and also all the fear implications and how ignorance and our own wounded and transgenerational heritage about how we perceive birthing can be matching and being exactly the recipe that we need for coming here in a more healthy way. So I'm very impressed by this. Thank you so much for helping me to understand, and I'm very touched by the topic. Wishing my best to Joy, to Una. And well, I was writing something, I was reading that I misunderstood what I wrote. I just want to say, hey, I was doing a mistake in the chat. I love you so much to everyone, and thank you for letting me express and share myself.
Beautiful. And the men as well. Okay, last call. Anyone else? And then we'll close. If any. Yeah, if not, then we wish this process the most love and the most admiration. It's always like the biggest job. I think that's actually interesting what Una said, that it's labor. It's like it's Labor Day. The birthing process is Labor Day. It's work. So admiration for all of that work of like transitioning a universe into a human construct. It's gonna be like this eternal mystery. Like how does it work? Like how does the woman construct actually hold such a potency? It has to be nuclear somehow. It's like but man or woman, we all hold that in us, the potential to give birth. There's something more. And like the in the training last week, because we're in Finland, I would look at some people and I would say, somehow we were finished before we even started. Like we were finished before we even started. Listening to the people share in this talk, it feels somehow like there's already been so much work, so that even though the birthing process might be new for some people, everything that we've been journeying through has been like on the way to this. It's like we've done this already. Like we don't need to keep repeating what's already been done yet. When we bring it into this context where it's going to contribute to the beginning, like when you try to think of change, where do you begin? You may as well start with the very beginning. But then we're stuck with the paradox of the chicken and egg feedback loop. Like, where does it start? So to have mothers wondering about the best, most organic and loving way to initiate the universe into Earth, I think we're honoring quite a bit. But then again, listening to everyone sharing, it's like the process that we've been doing, it's been the training. So I want to say I believe in Joy and Una. I think that you heal women just by being where you are at now, having gone through the process and then demonstrating it. No matter what happens, like, yeah, you could end up in the ER. Even me saying that just helps to release all of those unspoken things. That, okay, what's the worst fear? Like, just let that go. it doesn't actually matter. What matters is the intention, the love, and the confidence, and the life, the living of this. Oh, my video is off, like Italy said. It means a lot in terms of just holding the space, like in that sense. So yeah, like your intentions opened up this conversation, and I don't think this conversation would stop unless women stop giving birth and humanity kind of went into expiration. We'll stop the project. So somehow, like, a lot of this means something somehow. Some kind of turning point. I was reading the news today, and like right now there's a super typhoon passing over the Philippines, but like the one I was reading was more about something to do with the Arctic and Greenland, the shelf, and like it's just gonna be so horrible and impossible and bad. So much bad news that it seems like there's nothing we can do about it, because like pollution and climate change. Yeah, like Joy has important work happening. Her husband has important work happening. So somehow this baby coming through possibly has important work happening. So something kind of big is being birthed here somehow. So I feel like you kind of looped us into honoring this universe that's in your body right now, and it's yeah, it feels right. It feels right. So hoping you feel supported by our community, and we feel supported by Joy embodied and just becoming real right now. Thank you. Thank you. And Una as well. Okay, so closing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. And thank you, everyone. It was
Thank you,
quite
everyone.
enjoyable.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
we're there with you, Joy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Let us know how it goes. We love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone. Good night. Good morning or something. Mm.